Hey now. So here's the introduction. This isn't the actual video, but hey, the actual video um, is beyond 5 hours long. So what you are about to partake now is part two. So because the recording automatically split, I'm going to upload them separately because something tells me that the file is going to be too massive to try to upload all at once. So here's part two, which is going to stop abruptly in the middle of the reading. Um, this is the card that will mark the end of part two, the start of part three. So when you see this card pop up, know that it is close to the end, but there's also a few announcements and notifications that will follow the core of the recording. So please stay tuned and stay with the video until the end so that you can get all of the juicy announcements so that our summer may blossom as wonderful as the Six of Pentacles, if you will. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you soon. Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. Hey, y'all. Bravehearts, Urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters. Welcome to part two of the Big-Momma reading. I've had at least 12 hours to meditate on what it is that I'm going to say to y'all folks during this session. And let me tell you something, it's comical. It's comic book worthy. You hear me? It's Marvel Studios worthy. Not really a DC comic chick, but I'll cross dimensions if I need to. So here is the deal. Let me pause this before all sorts of censorship shit come for me. Yeah, check it out. Like this is where we are right now. Just real live, real quick. This is where we are, okay? Metaphorically, metaphysically, invisibly, non-physically speaking, therapeutically speaking. This is where we are, right? Thanos is shaking his ass, doing his thing. Even though I have to say, shout out to KT the Osh degree. He actually put a different spin and paradigm and perception on Thanos and what's really good with him. So, yeah, just in the context of the Marvel universe, yeah. So, I got to thinking, as promised, my dictionary, right? I have been in constant companionship with this dictionary since 2016. It's when I received it, June 2016. And one thing that I want to point out, which will put to rest, set the record straight, and put to rest forevermore about my relationship with words. And I noticed that we do have um, an onslaught of individuals who would love to discredit the power of words. And I'll say this to them, that when you don't take great stock in understanding the power that could be, the potentiality of the yielding of such powers, not realizing that it is truly in conjunction with comprehension and usage. Everything from the start of print on into moving pictures starts with words. Piece of paper, pencil, and initiative. So, the two things that start as intellectual seeds into making a production like that start with why and the compilation of words, the symphony of words, the mixing and mingle of vocabulary and its fundamental comprehension. So I think now that I'm thinking about it, this is a good opener. The good opener for this spread that we about to unpack is that those that we would consider opposition are only going to take a counteracting opposition, meaning the counteraction to their opposition is when it's in words, printed. We're dealing with folks that only have some act right when it's in script. And you don't have to take my words for it. Historical apparatus is all over this dimension, proving my point that says you will not be taken seriously if you do not have the ability to transmute your expressions into words. Because I am an intuitive coach that is endorsing the relationship with self, Temet Nos, which is the catchphrase that was just above the Oracle's door when Neo in the Matrix went to go visit for the first time. What'd she say? Neo, I can't tell you you the one. Only you can tell you that. So if you figure you the one, you are. If you figure you not, you not. And that's the ultimate truth. No one can kiss you or dish you without your permission. Let me back up. They can try. But what solidifies that into truth is all you, baby. It's all you. You will come up against or with those that don't quite understand you. You will remain an enigma to a lot of folks. Because of that gap in comprehension, they will try to fill that with assumption and misjudgment. They'll never gain the courage to want to have an immaculate conversation with you to find out better. They will always stay snug in their assumptions and populate the rumor mill with a whole bunch of shenanigans. Hence, that fuckery right there. So, with that said, I have something I'm going to show you before we really truly get into this spread. So, while I look for this, let me tell you a little something that happened to me early this morning. I'm usually up I am usually up between 4:30 and 5 every morning, 7 days a week. It really does not matter um, the day. Here lately, I have been adopting the 4-day work week, and not in the conventional sense of work. Creatives especially vineyard type creatives. So when I say vineyard, I'm metaphorically speaking about the grapevine. So those that are low to the ground, in the trenches, deeply rooted in the community, those types of creatives I consider grapevine creatives or grapevine griots, all depending on the storytellers, the orators, the playwrights, the songwriters, the musicians, the artists, the poets. Did I say it already? Not sure. Okay. I tell you, when the dogs get to barking, my mind just go bloop. So please forgive me, right? And then also, I decided to wear the headset because the sound quality for part 1 was a little choppy, but I decided to post it anyway because I swear the moment was priceless and I ain't feel like re-recording. So please bear with. Um, and yet again, it is a beautiful day to be. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful place to be in Washington D.C. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And so now I'm asking you to be my virtual neighbor. Won't you be my neighbor? Self. This is the situation that is populated in such a book of this in print, which means it's permanently reserved. All of these words are associated with self. Now, here's the trivia that from the moment I laid eyes on this, I began to ask folks, do you know what word takes up an entire, uh, I don't even know like what to call this, but it's a full spread as far as I'm concerned. Even, if we think in terms of layout, what word, what other word, no, what any word inside the dictionary takes up a full spread. And most folks will be or have been quite surprised when I tell them the meaning surrounding self. Why? Because we are often groomed to believe that to be self indulgent is a bad thing. So we'll take that off the table. We'll say we won't indulge. We'll transmute that to scholarship, deeply rooted, unconventional scholarship. You have to be quite your view. Your view has to be at a very unique angle in order for you to honestly, truly, authentically see yourself. And then do good to suspend your judgment while doing so, which means you have to take your light and your shadows and allow them to connect so that you may have a secular, a circled, a secular, a cyclical. Yeah, it'll come out at some point. But so that you may have a full circled effect to the ebb and flows of the energies that will come upon you to engage with you. It's taken me some time. And when I say some time, I'm talking about some major league time to understand me. Saying that I'm a complexity doesn't even do justice to all of the multifaceted components that make up me. I started tapping into this investigation, and I think I want to say at least 5 articles that I've posted over the years, which are still up inside the virtual domain. That's very easily accessed through northstarnarratives.blogspot.com and as well as on behalf of the story.blogspot.com. I have a scribed page that is along the right side pane of both blogs. so that you can, if you're interested, take a look at the topics that I have attempted to explore, if you will, and add my words of evaluation to them. Because at the end of the day, my experience really is all about observation. I'm not necessarily here to teach anybody anything other than myself. And then, even so, I don't believe that I, I'm teaching and learning inside of the conventional means of what teaching and learning means, more so than its observation and recollection. Because tying into our conversation yesterday, um, I have, and am subscribing to the notion that says that in non-physical spaces, I am part of a celestial pantheon, and a portion of myself decided to embody in this flesh so that I may experience the third dimension. In doing so, I took on the preface that I would lose all of my extraterrestrial, superhuman, celestial bound powers, but because the way this realm is set up, my physical vessel acts as a two-sided coin. And so one side of the coin faces the physical world, while the other side of the coin faces the non physical world. And between this space here, between the upper echelons of my chakra centers, I may tap in to one or the other or both. In my opinion, meditation is the more active tool for one to be able to cross reference and cross review and cross contemplate and cross comprehend realms. And it feels like, as time continues to unfold, it feels like to me I am one of those that will be forever in human embodiment, interpreting the two realms and how humans are interchangeable within these realms. We are not third dimensional creatures. We are multi-dimensional creatures who came to this realm for a visit. Adopting this particular paradigm has allowed me to approach certain situations from various angles, mainly through my curiosity of what folks look like in their non-physical spaces. Physical spaces will depict the essence of one's inner beings. And I said plural, beings. Why? Because the non-physical spaces have a myriad of attachments and linkages to it that most often the human can live out its entire third dimensional existence without having a clue to these connectivities. Only those that study within those mystical, magical languages understand and sharpen its awareness of these truths. Because the human being is so dynamic in its creation, it's become damn near impossible to be able to bring forth a level of understanding that could be considered common sense. So, historically, since the beginning of the recording of time, individuals have had a very hard time trying to gain a perspective amongst the masses Now, without being tampered with, the individual itself will intuitively be guided through this experience, learning about itself and its circumstances and its situation. So, an individual left alone to its own devices, physical and non physical, would eventually arrive at the place where it has a full notion of itself. But then that leads to the availability of it having its own mind, to it having its own set of sentiments that could very well be in opposition to the powers that be. I was listening to a lecture not too long ago, and it said something to the fact of it being the powers that shouldn't be. More and more that I contemplate the little bit that I feel I know about what's going on in this time and space, I'm finding myself being in agreement with that. Several people would be led to believe that I have a problem with authority. I'm a Capricorn, for peace sake. I am of cardinal essence. I have no problem with authority. I have a problem with fuckery. I have a problem with abuse of authority. I have a problem with the bullying aspects of power, that addictive shit to power, and the greediness around having the audacity to give half truths for the sake of manipulation or no truth at all. I tend to be sensitive, highly hypersensitive around that type of shit. And so, most often, in I want to say the last 8 or 9 years, because of this hypersensitivity, I have had to literally choose, not necessarily my battles, but choose where I showed up in the world. Because only a handful of other human beings in this realm truly understand my reasonings why, it's often misconstrued. It's often put into parameters that does not do it just. Um, and only lately have I been allowing myself the permission to turn the camera on and authentically express. So two things that's going to carry us into this Big-Momma reading. One is the power of definition, the power to define. If you can feel it, you can heal it. If you can name it, you can claim it, right? And well, let's just go with that for right now, okay? Let's step into uh, let's step into portal one. So let's tap into my story, my mini briefing. So this morning, at the brink of me coming back into this realm of consciousness, this realm's consciousness, actually, because in my opinion, when we sleep, we turn off our consciousness to this realm, and we actually tap out of the physical space and begin to travel non-physical spaces. We check in with those that we are celestially connected to. When I returned to consciousness early this morning, the song I Care for You by Aaliyah was playing so crystal clearly in my inner ear, and I'm talking rhythm and all. It really was as clear as if it was being played in the physical space through the speakers. And because it's one of my favorite songs, I had to just lay still and allow it to play. What became, mm, it was mystical, whimsical, but what became mysterious is when it continued to loop. When I realized, and it does that sometimes. There are certain songs that will play over and over in my head, sometimes for days, all depending on if I'm going to acknowledge what it's here for. I'm a music buff. My brother's a DJ and a professional, tenured DJ. And even in a brief conversation with him, found out that on my dad's side, there were a few music professors and teachers from 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 that side. It saved my heart the day that he told me because my love for music is still an underscore, meaning that I don't usually lead with that. Um, but being engaged in music does something to my soul. It makes me want to move on contact, that's for sure, especially if it's something that I rock with and I can boogie by myself. I literally do not need a partner. Me and the music, yeah, we have our way. So music selections will loop in my head. Now, um, for the most part, it just seems to arrive as a song that I like, and so it loops as the background music as my day goes on. If it's a song that brings up a particular timeline or a particular person, I will, if I can, immediately go into those spaces and start contemplating that particular person, place, or thing to see if there are any messages waiting for me in the non physical spaces that would help me inside my physical spaces. This is what I have interpreted India Ari's concept of conversation to me. And I've noticed that not too many have tapped into unfolding the paradigms and interpretations around this thing called conversation. Just like it feels like the momentum is rather slow to pick up with regards to the mama mentality or the um, spirit animal mentality, personality, emotionality around one's animalistic characteristics, especially in realms of alpha, ace, apex. The power to define. So as the song continued to loop, I decided to, or I got the notion to, get on up and get started with my day. Song still looping in my head. The notion to look up the meaning of my name. Oh, and let me just mention too. Usually when a certain song, and let me just show you, yeah, because this is how music does me. Like it really is my it's my chant, it's my kundalini, it's my power, it's my passion. It is in my bones and have been um, for a long, long time. Looking up the meaning of my first name, and so Thea, and it can be spelled. different ways. It could be spelled Thea, Thia, or Theia. Also, in other language, it translates to Yuri, which is Eury. And I know it doesn't sound the same, but in co-languages, it never does. Um, so some folks who are, one, um, familiar and fluently speak in mythological terms, as well as have some type of background of Greek philosophy, philology, which is the relationship and the etymology of language. They will call me Yuri. And so I often giggle about being, being being, being a creature of many names and characteristics. There are some that only know me inside the classroom at the Beauty Academy. And so that is a very highly professional, very situated, very polished level. And so they know me as Miss Thea. Some know me as the Golden Wildling, where they've seen many instances where I was inhibition. They saw me in inhibited terms. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love the song Telekinesis by Neo, because at the beginning of the song, not only does he tap into the power of words and commands, he allows it to be artistically displayed. So when the song first comes on, it says inhibitions off. Like, that is as simple of an effort to yield the power of words inside of structure of command that not only does the flip side of the physical body has to adhere to, so does the non-physical flip side of the being, which could never be if there were not words to activate the command. Thea was the Titan goddess of sight and the shiny ether of the bright blue sky. Thea bore the Titan Hyperion, three shining Hyperion, and I'm not sure if that's the way his name is pronounced, but I believe so. So the Titan Hyperion, she bore him three shining children: Helios, the sun; Eros, the dawn; and Selene, the moon. Her name was derived from the Greek words Thea, Thea, meaning sight and prophecy. I don't know if you can so you can take a look at what's really good, right? So that had me tumbling down a rabbit hole that I freely went. I allowed my intuition to guide me through this silver lining of a space that many would consider meditation, but this was a little different. I think the word and the concept of meditation actually did what I experienced this morning no justice. Why? Because during the travels, the song was continuing to loop, which gave me, in many instances when it does that, when it does this massive looping like that, it makes me feel like the divine ship within my non-physical spaces really want me to pay attention to the song, the lyric, the melody, the fact that I like it, gauging the reasons why I like it, why I like it so much, what was attracting me and pulling me, contracting me, like all the effects that this particular song has on me, I am to pay attention to, or else it wouldn't be looping like that. So by the time I tidy up the room, transmute it over into a workspace, and prepare coffee, put on the house clothing that I was going to for the day, and get myself situated to facilitate this reading, the notion said, play the song. So by this time, laptop is fired up, everything's, and it says, play the song. So by this time, I am keyed into, I am to receive a message. Something's coming across the wire. So I tapped into my yo listen up mode and put on the headphones and turned it up to the point where it surrounded my senses, where I could not hear anything within my peripheral, and allowed myself to be one with the song. So after it finished playing, it said, now listen to it again and pull some cards. Now, this is what's magical about this thing. I have now gotten to the point where I know how to shuffle without looking, almost like riding a bike with no hands. And so now I'm comfortable with shuffling cards with my eyes closed. So instinctively, to shuffle with my eyes closed and listen to the song was not an actual instruction within my inner ear. It was just something that naturally happened. So I went with it. This is the group of cards that came out. And so this evening at 7 o'clock, I'm going to premiere the reading and unfolding of these cards. It will be an exclusive song for Station, surrounded around Aaliyah's I Care For You, which I encourage you to go listen to, especially if you are one that likes it, like likes it for no other sake but other than liking it because it moves you, it tugs you, it does things to you. Listen to it and see if there are any messages that resonate just for you. So with that said, I don't even think I decided, I think it came to me to host a reading that is entitled For You, To You. And that from the dwellings of one's inner being, messages are waiting in queue that will probably help determine and decipher our present time and space. I honestly believe we have entered into a portal where direct messages from non physical spaces will be highly unique to the individual. Mass messaging may be getting ready to become a thing of the past because there are intricate details where a message that's for me may not be for anybody else in this round. And so that's going to put an end to these Bama ass commercials. I hate commercials. And commercials and advertising is two different things. The marketplace does well with advertising. They let you know what's going on this week. You can decide if you want to If you don't want to, usually it's posted in certain central places where you can go to it. It doesn't like interrupt your space of concentration with these corny ass, yeah. So, marketplace advertising is respectful, is reciprocal. Corporate commercially, and so I think that particular intrusive ass component of human existence is about to begin to dismantle. So here's what I'll do, for the sake of enticement, sake of a little marketing advertising, put you on notice. Um, I'm going to give you right now the first card and the last card of this spread. And tonight at 7 on YouTube via the channel Skylar Indigo Inc., we're going to tap into these cards and see what's good. So, the first card, the Queen of Cups. So, right off the break, it told me that we're going to be talking about the caregiving of the divine feminine, and not just any old kind of caregiving, the evolution of emotions, which in the world of coaching and counseling and alternative therapeutic tools and tactics, EQ is emotional intelligence. So we are tapping into the scholarship that allows us to better understand the balance between IQ and EQ. That in a highly hyper logical world of scientific means, which includes technology and engineering, there is this overwhelming perception that anything that cannot be measured and counted is not worth contemplation and is not worth respect and practical reciprocity. I beg to differ. And I honestly think inside this little itty bitty deck, we're going to tap into the fundamentals of that. I really do. Because why else will we be leading with Big-Momma? Well, she got arms big enough to nurture a nation, and that her concepts, her intuition, her intuitive guidance is going to return to its seat at the cosmic table, which then, thus, will trickle into the human embodiments of this thing we call awareness and paradigm shifting and probability, possibility, encouragement, endearment, enrichment, endowment. Last card of this spread is the Hierophant. Now, I will say right off the break, I do not have much experience with translating the energy of the Hierophant, but I'm looking forward to it. So, all of my tarot teachers and all of my tarot tutors, especially the traveling tutors who are well spoken, quite fluent in the language of tarot, especially as their love language, I'm thinking that if you have the opportunity to watch this before you tap into the premiere, that you're already being intuitively hit with your highly unique resonance with whatever it is we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to ask that you arrive with your note taking utensils. I think the divine is bringing forth all the messaging that it can to remind us of how much they care, and that there are people, places, and things that have messages waiting in queue for us, and that we do good. We do very well to sharpen those senses that would grant us the proper translation, the proper comprehension around such things, around such messages. It honestly is time to pay more attention to the message than the messenger. Because honestly, at the end of the day, we wasting time trying to judge the feats or failures of humans. We all have. Might not be equaling amounts of one or the other, but we all, it's promised to the human experience. More so in the essence when failure honestly is the intellectual seeding to fortune and fortress and forward movement. Almost as if the combination to those things, with failure as the skeleton key. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to join me during the premiere. One of the reasons why I decided to make it a premiere is because I would like to be part of the conversation as it is premiering so that I may interact. And mainly for an opportunity to engage with those that will be sitting with me as watching it as it unfolds, because all of my videos have the comments turned off for the sake of preserving my intellectual property. We have yet to tap into the space where we yield words respectfully. And sometimes there's more damage than not when comments come across the wire that are not only unwarranted but destructive. Many times I've scrolled through comments on certain pages just shaking my head at how not only did the comment not have anything to do with the content that was presented, it was just straight fuckery. And it's like, if only we could show up to folks' channels as students, like literally class is now in session. And granted, I know some things that are being presented really isn't worth being considered curriculum. I get it. But those that you know have showed up to honestly express what it is that they are discovering and learning and transforming and transmuting, the least you could do is not weight that down with your words. And so I just opted out of the option. But when the option to premiere came across my radar, I decided that I will slowly but surely tap into that so that as the comments are scrolling are being contributed, that I may engage so that more content, no, more context to the presented content can be made available. So let's get into the spread. It feels like I want to tap into the second thing that will allow the spread to go over at a more smoother rate. Um, and so it's this thing called implied consent. usually gets misconstrued as keeping the peace. So I've seen countless instances where it's like, well, I ain't gonna say nothing, trying to keep the peace. I'm gonna pick and choose my battles. And sometimes that is honestly the optimal choice. Other times, especially in this time and space and what's going on, we are in the midst of a human bound affinity war, whether you want to agree with it or not. And if you don't agree with it, all I'm asking is that you research and develop just a little bit more, just a little bit more, to gain a better understanding of where you are placed in this reality. Remember, each dimension has its own reality. We be figuring the human experience is the only reality that we encounter or endure. Even when you sleep, whether you dream or you nightmare, is a fraction of a reality from another dimension. So, implied consent, in my opinion, does the most damage inside the human experience, especially if it's one that compromises your being. So, the more common one is when actively engaged with other humans, we allow folks to think they know something when in fact they don't. Why? Because we are creatures of instances. So if you were this way 3 years ago and someone has not been part of your everyday transformations, mutations, maturity, they see you 3 years later and think you're that same format of yourself that you was when they last encountered you. They have no idea about the classes you've sat in, the books you've read, the time you've taken to understand self, the conversations from acquaintances that came post the last time they were able to be with you, sit with you, exchange energy with you. So, the insight to this is that we must stand due diligently in the space to get the records straight, to take back one's own individual power of pen. I am striving to build the momentum back where we tap into that thing that was historically called a man of letters. As a matter of fact, let me just let me just anchor in the power to define. Okay, so to be a man of letters, which could also, in translation over time, be considered a literator. Not the same as a literary agent, and I'm trying to think of another, but an evolution of it. So a literator could be equated to an entrepreneur or a restaurateur. It's someone who has taken on the pains and rewards of being a word wizard in literary form. So, all of my poetic justices, my storytellers, my orators, those folks that honestly take a true courtship with vocabulary and language for the sake of documenting, recording instances, archiving instances, being able to provide accurate accounts of instances. So, a man of letters. And this was the social catchphrase. This was the thing. Just like nowadays, folks are gleaming when they can identify themselves as shot callers, ballers, those that have the power to command things into existence, the manifestors, the manifestos, the virtuosos. Okay, so a man of letters met a man of means, meaning that they possessed sufficient wealth and was highly regarded as prosperous or well off. The qualities of this man of letters: he was direct, he flowed with integrity, he was honest, mature, self confident, and had a mostly positive attitude. What defined an individual as a man of words was his great ability to manipulate and compose communication in words, mostly in print. What made him renounced was his ability to use words to depict kindness, humility, and grace. So, a man engaged in literary pursuits, especially as a professional writer. So, men of letters were actually individuals that folks went to help compose their feelings into print. My particular cultural denomination, I want to say maybe the era of Black Wall Street, outside of the slave narratives. Um, I'm trying to think, but it may be above my knowledge grade right now if there were other instances. But trust me, I'm on the lookout. This is one of the things that I am naturally attracted to because history is preserved and reserved for those that are fluent in the practices of print. Prophecies are preserved in print. Insights are usually better absorbed when the eyes can scan over print, which is one of the reasons why I have began to compose transcripts along with some of my video sessions so that it may absorb better if the individual decides that they want to not only dive into a deeper look, but actually have an anchoring a substantial. a sustaining anchor preserved in words to follow. So if you have a transcript with accompanying the lecture, if you will, then you can always refer back to the transcript to jolt your memory with regards to the experience of the lecture. And it's now prompting me that I probably should do one for this one. We'll definitely do one for the premiere tonight. But composing transcripts is a heavy feat, and I'm already in edit mode for another project that I pretty much had dedicated in the entire June for. So I'm not sure if it will be available at the time of the premiere, but I have already, just in the back of my mind, have said yes to composing the transcript for um, our pilot reading for you to you. So let's get into the spread. We are dismantling this thing called implied consent. We are simplifying the modes of mass messaging. We are beginning to situate our awareness to be on the lookout for customized, individualistic messages for self, from self, with the understanding that the non physical spaces have celestial connectivity to it, and the beings that are connected to us in our non physical spaces want to speak to us because we are now fighting an infinity war. We are not fighting against flesh and blood for real. And I really don't think that there is not one religious or spiritual construct that has said otherwise. But we are so indoctrinated in the physical side of this human experience. We be totally neglecting the non physical sides of this experience. So, as I've said in many other recordings, there are certain non physical entities that's about tired of this shit. Like, I swear y'all ain't come here for this. Yes, unfolding of time and the interactions of other physical beings have brought forth it to be the way that it has been. But yeah, yeah. We can right have at this and see what this be like. So all those that have the equipped apparatus to hear, allow them to hear, and those that have the equipped sensitivities to see beyond the naked eyes, we are about to show you something. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. So our first set of cards is 4 oracles from the, oh, my book not in here, from the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck by Cal Gray. So card number 1 is the White Witch. And I promise you, it's not as wretched as conventional means would have us believe. I really hope a time comes where we get out of this Hollywood mentality. Because at the end of the day, and this is no malice to them, but I'm just speaking off of being a consumer as well as an observer of the way they do shit. And sometimes in pockets of history, they've taken on this God likeness, figuring that they will be the ones to usher in the modes by which we think and comprehend life. That's how powerful words and storytelling is. As a human being, we are hardwired to be able to find and identify ourselves within the storyline. Hollywood knows this. They know the power of words and story. They know that it actually can, with no effort, manipulate an entire masses just through the tapping into the connectivity of our non physical side of being. So, the White Witch, be the light. Let's see here. And I have taken the liberty to section that off for some reason. I don't know. I'll come back to that. Okay, so the the White Witch is on page 86 of the guide. Be the light. Take the higher road and choose the light. Remove yourself from low energy experiences. The White Witch card represents the maiden aspect of the triple goddess of paganism and modern Wicca. I always find myself having to bring definition to how I see things when I begin reading from other people's content and decipher where I land inside the context of conventional definitions. Paganism and modern Wicca, especially if you're not already in tune to such terms, you will probably result back to the mainstream views. Remember, I said Hollywood has taken its power, and some of it has fueled a lot of fuckery. The maiden is a gentle, innocent, and pure aspect of the goddess, a loving soul who wants nothing but the best for the whole earth. Here she is joined by a honored owl. And I think maybe at some point, I can't remember when really it's everything's running in such ebb and flows, kind of whimsical these days. But I believe I in the last two or three recordings made mention of the white owl, not particularly this one, even though this is a looks like a very ancient, wise one. Um, has been identifying itself as part of my animal spirit totem, and that I know the rhythm and sounds of the neighborhood owls. I can identify them. They even hoo during the day. So I am, and there's one that sits in the trees just outside my bedroom door because I can pretty much gauge by the volume of it, determining how close it is to me from where it's perched. But about 4 a.m. a few weeks ago, I want to say 3, between 3 and 4 a.m. a few weeks ago, I was just coming out of sleep because I had to go to the bathroom. Before I could get out of the bed, there was this very distinctive, very deep hooing. And it sounded like it was more of a bigger creature, but I knew it was an owl. And it struck my chords to the point where I sat for a few moments after, like, okay, what's the deal? Like, what are you coming to say to me? And conventionally, yeah, that would make uh, the STEM folks look at me odd because it's like, okay, really? An owl is coming to say what to you? Like, why can't it just be perched? That's just where it happened to land. As I've said before, I am becoming and sharpening my sensitivities to my non physical spaces. And seeing as that I dwell in those spaces of the mystical and the magical, I know that owls come to say something, even if it's just to say, yo, listen up. The next couple of days is probably going to render you some things that you really ought to be paying attention to. That's what I think of when owls show up, whether they show up in the middle of the night with a very distinctive voice or they show up in the cards. And all you have to do is do a really simple search with the symbolic meanings around owls, and you'll see what they represent. So when they show up in your life, when they cross your paths, you will know that it's an indication, it's a notification, it's a memo of some kind. Here she is joined by a horned owl, showing that she is willing to respect those with more wisdom and experience than she has. But she is also willing to trust what she feels to be right within. With this card, you are being reminded of the goddess within. No matter what is happening to you or around you, you have a choice. Choose not to be pulled into dramas, bickering, pulled, choose not to be pulled into dramas, bickering, or energies that are just going to limit your joy. If you are surrounded by people who are hostile towards you or someone else, you are in a negative situation, perhaps in your workplace. You are being invited to be the light. You are an incredible person who can really bring light. So how you, I'm sorry, so how can you change the energy? How can you redirect the conversation to love? How can you protect yourself? How can you help the person that is being picked on? Or are you the one who is guilty of causing a drama? A little bit of melodramatic. You will know the answers. Know also that you are being encouraged to shine the light you were born to share. So the second card is the Shapeshifter, one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. Okay, so the Shapeshifter is on page 68. Transform and unveil your gifts. Look at that card. That's just beautiful. So beautiful. I love this card. Take your time and focus on developing your gifts and strengths. The na- In native traditions, a shapeshifter is either an animal that has the capacity to change between species or a shaman who has the capacity to transform into an animal to go journeying. Journeying. If there is a wild animal you are particularly drawn to or fascinated by, It's probably because you can transform into one in your meditations or journeying practices to go exploring in other worlds. When you shift into animal form, you can see the world through different eyes and tap into the animal's survival skills to help yourself through a particular situation. Hashtag Mamba mentality. You may have been through many challenges and lows, but now you are in a space of transformation. You are moving beyond the past challenges and honing your current strengths. There are opportunities for you to discover and rediscover your gifts and talents that and rediscover the gifts and talents that you were born with and born to share. Not everybody are income generators. There are other things that are worth nurturing and incubating that you will be charged with sharing. That was me saying that. Okay, back to the book. You are an amazing soul who can change and transform in ways that people least expect. You may have, mm-mm, you have many talents. You have many talents that you will share in your lifetime. You are guided to stay focused on the light, knowing that it will guide you forward. When this card arrives, there's only an when this card arrives, there's also an opportunity for you to tap into the power of your spirit animal. Note if you're seeing a particular animal regularly, note if you are seeing a particular animal regularly because its medicine is coming to you. Note if you are seeing a particular animal regularly because its medicine is coming to you. Okay. It's like I'm not reading that right. But okay, so yeah. So the owl comes to me regularly. So me being fluent in the understanding of what the owl represents solidifies my symbiotic relationship with when the divine comes to speak to me in signs and symbols and signals and notifications and memos and interventions. By me taking time to become fluent in the symbols that mean something to me, especially with my embracing of the power to shapeshift, that a lot of my existence is not in my physical human embodiment. My human embodiment only has a fraction of my entire being in this existence. And I really would say one third. I honestly believe that the essence that dwells within this flesh, that has animated this flesh, is only a third of my entire being that has come into this dimension to see what the fuck is going on. And so as I identify with certain owls, not only does it give my physical being an indication, a aha of my powers or my talents or my gifts or my spiritual endowments, it also taps me into where and how I may practice to bring forth certain powers that the average folk would call super. And I thought that it was four. I thought that it was four oracles, but it's only three. Okay, so the last one is the great teacher. And that is on page 36 of the guidebook. the great teacher. Learn from spiritual experiences. And so let me just clarify that because I am a coach of intuitive studies, when I speak spiritual, it's interchangeable with the mystic, the magical, the ancient, the hidden, the symbolic. I do not speak in religious terms. And it's not that more so that I'm ignorant in it, because from my early 20s to my mid 30s, I was engrossed, I was enveloped in the scholarship, mainly Christianity, but at the phase out of, as well as my mom being a born, was born into Catholicism. So as a young child with my grandma and my mom's side of the family being heavily rooted in that component of religiosity, as well as my dad's mom and that side of the family being more, I'm just going to say urban Baptist because I don't know the specific denomination. Um, so religious speech was always somewhere around me. But because of my mom's run ins with the Catholics and the way they did church, she vowed to never throw it or force it upon her children. She always led with the sentiment that whatever was calling her children, they would have the freedom without figuring that they're going to be some type of disappointment if Catholicism wasn't a choice. And honestly, she did me a solid because I was more so given the silent permission to ebb and flow as my heart deemed it so. So even at the brink of me getting married, which I want to say I was about 22, 23. Yeah, I want to say early 23, just beyond turning 23. So with my husband at the time being deeply rooted in Christianity, of course, and me being really neutral at the time, it wasn't hard for me to transition into that spectrum. And because I am the way that I am, I'm a lover of books. So it did not take long for the Bible to become my constant companion, as well as the peripherals of the concordance or any type of biblical dictionary. Always with a dictionary. You could take a look at the dictionary to determine the phases that I'm in, and it's amazing the way that has happened, even from a child. If knowing that I'm always with dictionary, then by looking at the titles, you'll understand the themes that are influencing me at that particular time and space. And it's weird because it's always been around so that I could have a firm understanding of what was unfolding in content and context around me. I remember when I was younger, I want to say maybe about 9 or 10, my big brothers, we are 10 years apart, his friends, and even my older cousin, my mom's first cousin, I believe, used to always say, "You always be coming up with these big words. How you this little girl with these big words?" Only recently have I been able to reflect on that and give honest, authentic giggle to that. Like it was also a message through the divine that they knew it would stick somewhere in the back of my mind and be pulled forth when it was needed most for me to not second guess where I am and how I am situated in this reality. Know that what is happening around you is divinely inspired. Learn from your current experiences, then share them with others. This card, and I want to say this, maybe one or two other ones, specifically speak in Christianity terms. So just take note of that. But let me also say, real quick, remember, we're dismantling implied consent. So reading this card and bringing awareness around the energy of Jesus. Me and my daughter was talking, I want to say a week or two ago, and it wasn't even that right at that moment we were talking. She was actually supporting me while I ranted and raved about some things. And my greatest problem at that time is I was saying that there are so many that will wear and wave the banner of Jesus, but they are not necessarily depicting the lifestyle that Jesus stood for. Sandals and real simplistic clothing and for the people, and literally kick the money changers out of the sanctuary, and hanging with the thieves and the so-called prostitutes, and finding his way most often alone. Remember, the magical age of coming into oneself is 33. And yet we throw the kids out into the great unknown at 18. Or at least we imply that they are grown somehow and should be somehow maneuvering that social jungle on the outside of the homestead. I digress. This card was inspired by Jesus, who is one of the most widely acknowledged and loved spiritual teachers of all time. But there is a great teacher in every tradition, and this card represents the one to whom you feel closest, as well as the great teacher within. The teacher wears simple clothes here to the teacher wears simple clothes here to demonstrate that even if you live a simple life, it can be an incredibly spiritual one. He is surrounded by a sense of serenity and harmony because he has absolute trust in the highest power that moves through him. And the drove, oh, I'm sorry, and the dove on the card represents receiving answers to prayers through signs and experiencing peace through joy. This card can represent a teacher in your life or the great teacher within. Either way, it shows that you have dedicated a lot of time, effort, and energy to understanding yourself and the world. You are having spiritual experiences at this time and gaining a greater awareness of what you need to do in order to grow. There is a great chance that if you've been having any challenges recently, you've surmounted them and allowed them to be vehicles to lessons that are helping your spiritual connection. If you feel that you've received messages from heaven or the universe recently, this card is confirmation that these have indeed been holy experiences. Yeah, yeah, baby. So here we are, right? And so this is, in fact, the foundation by which we will speak as we continue to unfold. So keep in mind, hopefully, you have been adhering to my soft suggestion that when you show up, that you have pencil and notebook and highlighters at the ready because there are messages being exchanged. And so right now, I think I'm going to pause just for a second because the background noise is baffling me, but I'm going to get it together, I promise, so that we can truly get to the unfolding of the spread, because that wasn't even the spread. Looky here, like this is the spread. This is the cards that we're going to unfold. Remember from yesterday, from part one, this is card one, the Ace of Wands, which means it confirms we are moving into magical spaces if only we understood and had the language to be able to properly process and transmute. So we're going to take a break for a moment. And when we return, we're going to get into this. Stand by. All right, we are back. Y'all remember Doc Strange? So I'm going to dedicate it, Big-Momma spread. I'm going to dedicate Big-Momma spread to Doc Strange because I honestly believe in non-physical spaces, they hang out together. I love that man. So I'm about to pitch you something. And if you are an individual that leans more inside of your logical hemispheres instead of your intuitive, imaginal hemispheres, you might not catch this one. But the good thing about recordings, you can always rewind it. You can, you can tweak your practices and sharpen your skills, and you can come back, and then yeah, you literally will be able to start catching these left fielders. And I know, according to mainstream, something that's way out in left field is not worthy of being caught. I beg to differ. I think all of the mystical, magical, whimsical, delightful, enriching stuff happens off to the side where many do not have the courage to venture into. And remember the theme for all 2020, we are venturing into, tapping into, wandering into the wild unknown. That's where we're going. That's where we've been going. And you don't have to take my word for it. Not only has prophecy promised you this, but the world is unfolding accordingly. Go figure. So, we will be using the Wild Unknown Tarot for this spread. And um, I have, okay, so there's something called narrative economics. What's rather interesting is that many folks that look like me don't realize how much of a booming economy narrative is. Those that will depend, those that use the pen as their magical wands, even their pencils. Come on, drafting mode is very, very, very critical in the light of the enchanted story, the enchanted storyteller. Those that tell stories to bring to life the realms that can't be measured and counted have now taken on the charge. They have answered the call of duty to bring more understanding of these non physical spaces into the third dimension. We have been, over the break, I went and had lunch. So we are playing lip gloss. Realize, yeah, okay, we're good, right? Yeah, we're good. It's the whole thing about having visual effects. All you want to do is get your message out. Okay, So this is what we're doing. We're talking about vineyard creatives. Now, before the break, I mentioned what I consider a vineyard creative to be. I have in sections what I figure need to be the accomplishments that will need to be mastered before I can solidly stand as a documentarian, one who produces documentaries. But all along, slowly but surely, I have been connecting dots with not only distribution for these particular documentaries, because they will be Underground Railroad in format, kind, and quality. So just like Harriet Tubman had to do, which is one of my most grandest phenoms. Like she is divine feminine at its best, meaning that she has the capability to nurture you, but she also has the capability to yield a rifle and not squeamish about pulling the fucking trigger. So, with that said, and there's no malice in this, understand that we signed up to tap into this world for all its grime and glory. And only through mass manipulation have we been indoctrinated to think, not necessarily feel, because most often we feel when shit ain't right. Implied consent. Remember, we are dismantling implied consent. Doctor Strange is a portal player. You hear me? He don't fuck around with them portals. I just love how he just shows up. Like he just that's my baby. Anywho, and in tonight's premiere, I'm gonna break down um, a few um, archetype archetypal characteristics that I have come up with surrounding certain folks like this one right here. Doctor Strange is what I would consider an ace, which is synonymous with king. Because I'm not really into like royalty speech. Um, I'm more into gods and goddesses speech in ancient languages and shit like that. I had to find a term that carried or equaled uh, the same sustenance as a king, but I don't think I'll ever be able to subscribe to kingdom like communications because for one, most often it mistreats its divine counterpart, and I am one that ascribes to chess, and the most powerful piece in the chess realm is the queen. So it strikes me odd for those that would decide that they would try to establish an entire courtship, inner and outer courts, as well as manipulate constituents and throw shade to the queen that is honestly, spiritually, intellectually groomed to get your ass out of shit. So the dominance of certain philosophies ruffles my feathers. It gets my goddamn panties in a bunch. So I know that I have been allotted with the task of finding alternative concepts that will do just as well if not better, um, to take up the slack of all of the crumbling and dismantling that is going on right now. Because as quiet as it's kept, and trust me, it's very quiet, the mainstream is changing its mind settings and it's not really telling anybody about it. It's going to just, those who are paying attention will begin to see these subtle changes, and before you know it, we're going to be entering into a new calendar world where some changes that will begin to be depicted as major league without anyone really truly, without the average really truly being able to recollect how it all came to be. Um, Societies like the American society is infamous for such shenanigans, and only those that are in the know and who are paying keen attention will even be able to bear witness to such things. Yeah, they're gonna pop in like Doc Strange. If you really think the powers that be do not study the characteristics of certain magical and majestic creatures, shame on you. Shame on you. So let's get into it. Because I know you like, come on, coach. Like, we've been waiting since yesterday to get into the spread. I know, I know. Let's get to it. So we're going to take the first two cards. And I've made mention, and I am making a habit of making mention, that because I am still a novice tarot interpreter, I usually like to take cards in groups. Um, Unless it seriously stands out that it needs to stand alone, I am finding it more comprehensible for me to be able to do it in this manner. So the first two cards is the Ace of Wands and the Daughter of Swords. Remember, we are using the Wild Unknown Tarot. So let me get out my handy dandy trusty guidebook. And remember, we give an honorarium to Doc Strange and Big-Momma. And so the Daughter of Swords, right now, if I had to equate, and this is without me really tap, because I do not know the carrying energies of either one of these cards by heart just yet. But just off of a sake of intuitive value, I would say Doc Strange, Big-Momma, right? Okay, so let's go with that theme. And remember, Doc Strange is a portal hopper. He is a multi-dimensional being. He can exist in several realities and still be just as comfortable, just as confident, just as equaled in any space that he populates. Yes? Dark Strange, Doc, Dark, Doc, DOC, Doc Strange enters into your reality through the infamous portal. It looks like a portal there too, doesn't it? So the Ace of Wands is on page 44 of the guidebook. Expansion, inspiration. An extremely high card, the Ace of Wands indicates new growth is all around you. Your ideas and outlook will expand, and creativity seems endless. This fertile time can also have literal meaning. A pregnancy or a birth may be on the horizon. And remember, pregnancy and birth in tarot as well as metaphorical terms can also contribute to an idea, a business, um, a relationship, a courtship. Though it's thrilling to embark on your new journey, your good judgment is needed more than ever. Don't rush into it. So that means I was going to use the analogy of highlighting dots and then connecting them, or as well as identifying puzzle pieces and connecting them. But then it just, wow. And okay, so now I have to force to catch it because it popped in real quick with the process of the vine to the grape to the wine. Yes? Those that will consider themselves part of the grapevine, not only has it taken them a while to formalize their root system, cultivating their root system, but they also had to yield the patience to make sure that what it is that they were planting, what it is that they were seeding and planting, cultivated in a magically delicious nature. There's a formula to fine wine. There is a patience to the behind the scenes and scholarship of fine wine. The Ace of Wands indicates to me that not only is it a highlight dot to dot processing, it's also like a portal processing, meaning that certain energies that may permeate your reality, you do good to become aware of because there are things that you could do to either infuse the process, enrich the process, sweeten up the process, or in contrast, because I know everyone do not like sweet wine, so I'll say taste testing, processing. And so to the likelihood of one's taste, there's patience to this thing called expansion. There's levels to this thing called inspiration, all in light of fine wine, baby. Can you tell me, wine drinker? Now that's probably the only type of spirits or alcohol that I'll do. I'm more of a smoker. I am about that cannabis life all day, every day. So, which is therapeutic value. So, I still stay in line with the therapeutic devices of this human experience. And I will say this, and I'm only revealing this for context of the conversation. Most often, when I talk about my childhood, it gets misconstrued that I somehow am still dwelling in some type of malice bound energies, and I'm not. I have grown quite a bit over the last 11 years, painstakingly so. Let me add that. So I didn't just wake up one morning enlightened. No, I tussled with this thing. I literally challenged myself to let everybody off the hook and start a clean slate. Why? At the bare bones of it, I don't feel like being mad at nobody. Now, that doesn't mean that all things have been rectified and reconciled. No. But for the most part, especially with regards to my childhood, I don't hold these major grudges. Now, do I walk in understanding? Absolutely. Absolutely. Which means to challenge my wherewithal with how I view things. Now, it's welcoming. I love a mental sparring. I do not back down from mental sparring. Um, but there still must be a respect around what I've grown to know. And so while I was still in utero, my mom was having this grand battle with alcoholism. And to this day, I now more so than when I was younger understand what those battles were all about. I'll never judge her for what she felt she needed to do to be able to contend with this reality. But with that being the thing, it began to direct my steps before I even entered into this space. Biologically, I can't do alcohol. It literally fucks me over. But coupled with that is that I somehow lose the patience for those that would get sloppy under the influence. That whole don't remember what you did the night before, can't take account for your actions, especially your words, um, or those that know that the substance will turn them into someone that will end up burning relationships that were meant to stay intact, or the abuse to self. Um, and what remains striking, since we're talking about expansion, let me talk about my intellectual expansion for just a moment. Here's what keeps me baffled sometimes: the mainstream perceptions when we want to do the cannabis versus alcohol conversation. Because many will still latch on to the assumption, no, no, no. I used to think it was an assumption. Assumption. Actually, they quite factual. It's quite right about them figuring that cannabis is a gateway. That I'll say, or should I say, to that I'll say, cannabis is more of a portal than a gateway. And even if we're going to say that it's a gateway, it's not a gateway into other drugs, baby. It's a gateway into other dimensions. And if you, and I'm really speaking to the anti-cannabis folks, especially those that won't even give cannabis, and I ain't talking about trying and indulging it, but just read up on some shit. Like, get you a journal and research and develop some shit. Then enter into the conversation when you figure like you're going to label it or decide that you want to diss it because you consider it to be a drug. Let me tell you what's a drug. I'm not gonna get into the whole, because I'm telling you I could be all day lining it up. If it was produced in a lab, if it was conjured by the components of chemicals, and yeah, we can flip flop back and forth to say that cannabis somehow is manipulated through some sort of chemical or this, that, and the other. I am talking about cannabis at its most fundamental formula. That exotic, mysterious, incredibly alluring plant that grows out of the soil of this dimension. It literally is a product of the environment. Being a human creature, you also are a product of the environment. Now, I'll just slide in the disclosure right now to say, as with everything, whether it's content or context, I'm not going to tell you what it is that you ought to be experiencing and or encountering. But I am going to tell you about mine if I feel the need to. And so it definitely is not the poor man's drug, but it is, without a doubt, the ace of wands to the grapevine creative. Yeah, holla if you hear me. Check out the chords. Truly check out the chords. And it's not for everybody. Just like Patron ain't for everybody. VSOP not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But if it is for you, and you indulge responsibly as you should with anything, whether it's shopping, working, loving, sexing, traveling, judging, all in moderation. And you know you, for you, to you. I can't wait to get to that reading tonight. So, the Daughter of Swords, Big-Momma, which can be found on page, and I'm laughing right now just to get prepared for the heaviness that's to come in the eye of this reading. So, the Daughter of Swords is on page 124 of the guidebook. Honest, insightful. The Daughter of Swords is a young woman whose honesty and insights take her far in life. People truly value her frankness. She learns from keen observation. It almost seems as though she never stops watching. Sometimes she becomes a burden. Sometimes this becomes a burden to her, as she can't help noticing this or that small detail that couldn't have been done better. That could have, excuse me, as she can't help noticing this or that small detail that could have been done better. There's a potential for her to hold on to those experiences, and there's a potential for her to hold on to those experiences and become spiteful and judgmental. I went through all that. I remember watching a intuitive interview with a cannabis cultivator and a spiritual guru. And I remember somewhere inside that conversation came out the paradigm that says that those that consume cannabis just for recreational or entertainment purposes will never ever encounter the summit of the experience, meaning that you indulge for sake of inspiration and intentional value. So after I finished with that interview, I challenged myself. Hang on a minute. There's some things that are beeping and carrying on. Let's see. I challenged myself to see if, in fact, I could intentionally allow my moments to stop from being, okay, to stop my contemplations from getting lost in certain translations. Meaning, I decided to take a honest, insightful view of my childhood and all of the key players who I was deciding were the villains or the protagonists and or antagonists or both, or the shit starters or the manipulators or the bullies, and allowed a trip down memory lane with a raw view, meaning I had to even learn how to suspend judgment to take this trip. And once I done that, there was a series of months that I was so fucking judgmental and critical of everything. But here's the deal, that was mandatory. That was the prerequisite. Always, yeah. The prerequisite for a more higher, more grander view. Like, I wouldn't have never seen over the fence had I not taken the steps of critical analysis, hypersensitive judgments, but never stopping there, never being satisfied with that. As long as I knew that that was what to come, and knew that by further deliberation, further contemplation, further honest recollections honest observations that over the fence I would eventually see. And so I think that's the main idea of the readings that I will be associating with Big Mama. Because I think at the end of the day, the ushering in of these quite primal, seemingly chaotic energies is not to destroy us by any means of the imagination. But I do believe that it is the provocateur to dis yeah, dismantle, yeah. Think about things that that need sifting. Even during the even during the gold rush era, like the regular petals and rocks had to be sifted from the gold flanks and flakes and pearls and such. So with just these two cards alone, it gives indication that not only do we have something magical going on, but we also have the ability to do something with that magic. Next card out is the Father of Swords, which is the King of Swords, and the Father of Wands and the Daughter of Wands. Now, just this instant, I and look at me struggling with it too. Like, so the notion just popped up in my head to talk about me and my dad's relationship. Now, according to tarot, because my dad's an earth sign and I'm an earth sign, um, with my dad being a Taurus and I being a Capricorn, we actually are depicted in terms of pentacles. But honestly, any father daughter relationship has always been a sensitivity to me since before I started having children. And I think I may mention to this before. There was a time when I honestly named my mom the villain and saboteur of me and my dad's relationship. Back then, in the early to mid 70s, there was this thing going on where there was this campaign that held on to the agenda that would keep the dad from out of the home. And often when we are inside conversations, I wonder if the distinction between public life and private life ever comes up to the table for close contemplation. There was this woman empowerment movement, subtle but yet deadly, that started whispering into the collective that it was more beneficial if the dad wasn't in the home, that more public assistance through ways of benefits that were not readily obtainable could somehow be rendered if it was just the mom in the home. And so a grand ushering in of Black woman independence manifested. I want to say about 13. At the age of 13, I began to confidently, loudly voice to my mom that had she not been such a fire sign, that some of the control that she figured she needed really could have been released to my dad. And that for her to figure that it was a better situation for me to be growing up in her home versus my dad's home was a bad call. It was a it was a call to the point where I honestly began to scrutinize pushy women who figured that because they have a child with a guy that that's somehow her tool to control the entire situation. I'm learning how not to decipher situations and circumstances in terms of right and wrong. If I'm going to wholeheartedly ambassador the concept that says we signed up for the majority of this shit. We signed up to experience certain things, hardships and harmony included, so that we may populate our Akashic records accordingly. There were some things that were just bound to happen, and that suspending the judgment that only looks through socially conditioned eyes is doing me a favor. But even with that, most of my decision making from mid 20s, definitely going into my early 40s, was all about the daddy daughter relationship. I often get scrutinized for not continuing on my grand hustle to become this ultra successful, like, bank account preloaded individual, reloaded individual. My hustle changed right about 2009, which was like at the brink of my divorce becoming settled, and truly this new life emerging. All the stuff that used to matter to me didn't matter anymore. I literally broke down my consensus with how I maneuvered in the world. Now, with all of that coming tumbling down, I did not automatically rebuild. I had intentions to do so. Um, but even with all of that happening and all of this being said, me not instantly regaining this ultra independent state allowed me, now, this gonna be a little tricky, so bear with me. Me hopping and skipping the poverty line rewarded me a relationship with my dad. Because I know for a fact that if I was like my ultra independent siblings, I never would have moved back here, nor would I have had the grand, priceless, invaluable moments to just be part of his energy. We ain't got to be saying too much. Ain't nobody got to rehash the past to be accumulating all these apologies. I'm not even one for figuring I need apologies on a regular basis, honestly. Because I've gotten to the point that some things happen beyond my understanding. And just because I don't like it doesn't mean the other person is literally the culprit where an apology is rendered. I think some people be yielding this wanting an apology thing as a mechanism of control, honestly. Because for real, and this is from me being in, and I'm sorry if I'm loud and like the pad, yeah, you can, if you feel it, can you fit, yeah, because my outer fringes is primal chaos, baby. Remember, the Black Panther is at the heart of my spirit animal totem. And the mother dragon is right there in the root chakra. So there may be moments where, as some would say, I get a bit intimidating. Now, I will say this. Let me say this. I'm not anti apologetic. That I'm not. But I have even found myself in situations where it's like, especially when it comes to this relationship right here, when it comes to the father-daughter relationship that's full of passion and loyalty and commitment and understanding and safe spaces of non-judgment and free from social conditionings. This relationship I uphold all fucking day long, twice on Sundays. So when I find myself in situations where folks' feelings are getting hurt and they be looking to me for an apology, I have to stand firm and say, I don't feel apologetic. I don't feel the need to apologize for this. I honestly stand firm on what it is that it is. From me, what I will do is make it clear that I do not do blanketed. I don't do general conceptualizations. So if I am standing on something that's very specific, so I will make it known that this is how I feel. And I never have, and I don't know if I ever will, but I don't particularly look for cosigners. I'm a vagabond at heart. I travel alone. So for me in particular, I think that these two cards, and when I let me just say this because I'm not sure if I've said it before. I read the cards as they come out. The most manipulation that I do to the cards is pair them up, but I do not change sequence. I don't even know once I begin to fluently speak if I will. I don't find the integrity in that. It honestly feels like the entities or the beings within my non-physical spaces had them come out this way so that the message will maintain its continuity. So when I saw these two, it did not immediately speak to me about me. Like I said just a few seconds ago, which was one of the reasons why I hesitated because I wasn't expecting to make this segment exclusively about moi. But I'm noticing here lately more and more my life as an example in bits and pieces is finding its way into this public domain. So, to keep the record straight, yes, I know that on the surface, in accordance to who I used to be and who I am now, is quite shell shocking for many. In my younger days, I was at a full time office job all day. Then, 5 out of my 7 days in the evenings, I was at the salon. Then I was somehow weaving in online college courses and married with 3 babies. When all of that came crumbling down, and let me just say this, this is an optimal moment to bring some more clarity into this experience called Thea. As the goddess of light and prophecy, mind you, the power to define. At the brink of my separation with my husband, there was a moment where I allowed a romance to ensue. In my opinion, he died prematurely. In the omniverse's opinion, nobody knew, as with any human, the origination date of the experience or the expiration date of the experience. We can try to forecast the birth of a human being, but usually it's going to come when it's going to come. And then we just record it as observers of the instance. I think as that is the same for death, or what I am now understanding it to be, the transcendence out of this realm, to be released from flesh. Zeke left this world not only, in my opinion, untimely, but it was such a striking catalyst to the shifting of a multitude of paradigms on my behalf that I honestly thought that I was going to lose it. And I'm talking about lose everything. And I know folks in my circles wonder, well, how in the world? Um, you were married and children and had this ultra successful livelihood. How in the world does this one merely seemingly whimsical quest in romance shatter you like this? So, I'm let you in on some real core contemplation. It wasn't him as the main objective versus him as the match. Okay? There was already fuel spewing all out into my spaces from battling pre divorce to having to recoup and live independently post separation to having to rearrange image to trying to go back to the drawing board with regards to crew and camaraderie and even family and tribe. Um, Maneuvering through ultra tender spaces, all while trying to identify self and hold on to that. And let me just say, education and scholarship, because all of that came to a screeching halt when I had to begin to live independently, learn how to live with just me being responsible for everything. And I don't mean everything as in the children. I mean just whatever it is that whatever it is that I was establishing was no longer a co-ed effort. It was now solo and exclusive. And most of my grand living came by way of being married to my husband. So to have to branch off, spin off, and reestablish, to have someone that you consider a significant other, even if he, and I'm still holding these cards up, but it doesn't relate to the father daughter, but even if he was not an official significant other, the moments were still of a very qualitative nature. And he died in a car crash, so it was not like he was sick. And if there was anything going on with him behind the scenes, I was not privy to that information. So in my mind, he was this healthy, vibrant romance that was speaking to my independence, that was encouraging all the things that I found intriguing, that literally was leaving his world to come help reestablish mine. And most often, when we are trying to view someone else's narrative from the fucking nosebleed seats, we do find inaccuracies or discover that we've been inaccurate about some stuff. Him dying is not what made all of it explode. As I said, there were already emotional fuels seeping out of my fucking pores. And so his death ignited it all. And it rippled to the core to the point where I began to reevaluate my entire existence, which wasn't the first time I've ever had to do that. So, for many who would not particularly understand me at my basic level, I see how the easy assumption for them to figure that his death was the reason why my whole life spiraled out of control. Yeah, I could see how that could be. But I also will say this, that relationship was a romantic intellectual relationship. And most often, even some marriages, either the romance exists or the intellectual component exists, but very rarely that's something very special where you have romance and intelligence all wrapped up in the same chemistry. So, needless to say, we were venturing out to do major business together. We were having pillow talk that was talking about business architecture and marketing strategies and production and distribution. And so, for all of that, too, like that was a major component in the rebuilding of my reality. So, it literally acted as if the explosion threw me halfway across town to another drawing board that I didn't even know fucking existed. So it's just like, okay, what the fuck? So, just to do my little due diligence with getting that record straight. But lo and behold, as time unfolds, I find myself with a different type of viewpoint and a different strategy to how I would build enterprise. Now, building enterprise has never left my scope. In 2011, I set out to become a seasoned writer, to just keep it simple. And even though I took the road less traveled, I've succeeded in that. Many would equate that by me not being this one to attract loads and loads of coin, that I somehow am not still within my trajectory. I know we live in an era where enterprises are popping up and sprouting up all over the place, but some homegrown, grass rooted enterprises take a while to incubate when it's directed through solo vineyard creativity. Yeah, I'll stick with that. I like that. I don't even know a vineyard, a mastering vineyard that sprouted up in a matter of less than 5 years. This relationship, my poverty landed me no matter how ratty and battered I was when I showed up at the front door, entitled me to open arms from my daddy that I did not get in childhood. That's miraculous in my book, all on its own. It's irreplaceable. I think that it is one of the things that probably attracted my soul to sign on to this experience because I knew at some point I was going to be part of the daily energy of the man that I hold very dear, including the fact that not only do my brothers remind me of him and his dad, my sons remind me of my dad and his dad. And it's just wonderful to witness. It's healing in motion. And it was for me to witness There was a lot of scholarship embedded in the return of my unsuccessful ass, my unproductive ass. So let's read it, shall we? So the Father of Wands is on page 70 of the guidebook. Charismatic, creative. The Father of Wands is a man of mystique and charisma. Others are drawn to him naturally, and he welcomes them with an open and loving heart. Usually you'll find him involved in the healing arts, as he's deeply compassionate and as he's deeply compassionate and in tune with life and nature. He is able to hold steady and still during conflict. And so like I said, this is the Father of Wands is in tarot directly connected to the fire signs. My dad's a Taurus, so he's an earth sign in terms of tarot. But this description, in this context, this is my dad and all my siblings, regardless of if they are near or far, um, know that the overall energy of our dad is this. And even sometimes, and I'll be wondering what the detailing of his entire birth chart is because I know my dad got some fire in him somewhere. Like, he is what the DC neighborhood would call street savvy. So yeah, you don't fuck around. And that's the warrior that's unapologetic. So, and it's amazing because that very essence for any type of guy that I've ever found myself intrigued by held that type of passion and fire. So, the daughter of Wands on page 64, visionary, passionate. The daughter of Wands is a free spirit, a truly visionary creature. She usually waits until later to settle down or start a family, as she's busy with her career. She can be stubborn and much stronger than she looks. As with all the Wands family, the daughter makes a dangerous enemy. This card can also represent a woman going through This card can also represent a woman going through a transformation or spiritual breakthrough. Now, I'm going to pull the next four cards together as the actual antagonist of the spread. And I'm pulling it in four because I honestly believe that it identified the energies that came over me all at once that actually provoked me to pull this spread. It was unbearable when I first identified that. I was like, I am cranky as shit. Like, OMG, like I'm like downright angry at the mass media. I'm angry at the cloaks and daggers with mass media. I hate mainstream news outlets. How do we really know what's really going on? Like, I am one that took the movie Wag the Dog very seriously. Like, it moved me to the point where I began to look at anything that would be considered news differently. And I know that some things come across the circuit just to get a rise. We have no way of determining what's real and what's not, or should I say, what's fact and what's fiction. those that have the power of media, there are some with ill will. Let's be real with this shit. Shout out to Bobby, brother Bobby Hammond. Let's not be funny with this shit. Like, we know that there are some out there that would produce a piece to get a row out of you with zero vet and validation. Zero. And yet, they'll post that shit up there. We'll be none the wiser. And we'll soak up all that drama. So, Son of Swords, Ten of Wands, Seven of Swords, Five of Swords. I have to situate my body for this one. Let's get situated here. I let's just get to the page. Let's just get to the first card first. Let's do that. Where we at? Hold on. Okay. Son of Swords. And I'm gonna read it's lemon water. Real bits of lemon in it. Whew. Let me say this. All the swords are not evil or bad. Remember, second card out was the Daughter of Swords. And so, as with any power, usually intention is what dresses it. Yes? But sometimes the energy shows up with its own established persona. The Daughter and the Son of Swords are epic examples of it. Most often, let me do this. I'm going to read it and then I'll tell you my most often. So, forceful and determined. A dynamic creature, the Son of Swords, is a man. A dynamic creature, the Son of Swords, is a man of action, not of grace. He pushes forward towards his goal with urgency and determination. To top it off, he's very well educated, making him a force to be reckoned with. Usually, he's seeking approval from the patient and just father of swords, who casts quite a shadow onto his son. Working with this working with this stimulating and exhausting young man can prove to be a challenge. Most often, this energy is white man privilege to me. And I am going to say that unapologetically. I was a little slow to want to tap that in here, but I'm not going to be able to get away from it. It's the way I honestly feel. When this energy shows up, it reminds me of the slave master's son, the next generation, the godchildren, the 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 second generation inheritors of slavery, or should I say, the economics of slavery? Because honestly, the black man's burden, are the heirs to the hardships and emotional traumas and treasures of slavery. Yeah. So, oh, you know what? Hang on, hang on. Yeah, no, these are wands. Okay, 10 of Wands. Hold on. Found on page 62. I hate to do it like that. Okay, situated. 10 of Wands. Burdens, blockage, difficulty. The 10 of Wands is a difficult card to face. Mental or physical burdens have been weighing on your spirit. Over time, this leads to hopelessness and depression. You simply can't get through to what you want. You cannot see the way. If this card appears in response to a personal situation, it might be best to simply walk away. But if this card comes up frequently, it indicates you are attracted to negativity. Choose You are attracted to negativity. You choose to walk the hard road. Next is the 7 of Swords. Secrecy, self-interest. Oh, on page 116 of the guidebook. 6 swords hang in plain view while the seventh is tucked under the sly fox's tail. So goes the story of the 7 of Swords. A secret is being kept. You're either the keeper or the kept from, and it's time to identify which. Deceit and avoidance linger in the air. Face the cause of secrecy or risk ostracizing yourself. Swap the 5 of Swords. Self-destruction. You're headed for self-destruction. Page 112 of the guidebook. Yet another card of warning. The 5 of Swords depicts the destruction of the self. You'll be lured into another situation or argument you know to avoid. Your selfishness and desire for power will lead you to defeat. Pain and discord will result. What's amazing, I used to be scared of these 3 cards. I used to be, especially this one. And honestly had to sit with my intuition and allow my intuition to talk me through a better understanding. Because I was almost tempted to pull these out of the deck just because I didn't want to have to deal with them. And it was like, are you really going to do that? Are you really going to willfully ignore all of the fuckery that goes on? Because when the cards show up, it's an indication of the energy. So, are you honestly going to bypass? Then you pretty much is a hypocrite of your messages if that's what you're going to do. Because we are talking about implied consent and the willful ignorance to know something is going on and not say shit about it, to oppose something and not say shit about it, to be in disagreement with something and not say shit about it, not necessarily to go charging forward into the fire of conflict or deal with certain eyes of storms, but to at least be able to say, I'm not cool with that. I'm in disagreement with that. Can we talk more about that? I don't understand that. I'm feeling some kind of way about that. I need more. Tell me more about that. And I think that's where we are right now. And quite honestly, if the combination of these four energies didn't like swarm me all at once, we probably wouldn't even be here right now. I wouldn't have had the urge to throw cards out. I wouldn't have at somehow found me saying yes to recording a reading. It hit me. And it hit me in such an uncanny way because I wasn't upset about anything. There wasn't anything that was unfolding in my reality per se that brought on this. I don't even know if I can really truly give you the words of how fucking mad I was. I've said at the brink of this that they are calling COVID 19, that it was more, that it was more going down inside of private spaces that they were telling public spaces. In some of my more inner circle conversations, I have made mention of the distinction between private life and public life, and that inside public life, you are not going to always get the full view of the seven swords. You're going to get partial truths just to keep you sated and satisfied. And by golly, wow, you can pretty much rely on, you can make secured bets that there is shit that is being veiled from you, that there are a lot of hidden truths, especially if the only way you get your news is from mass media. And most folks that look like me only have mass media to render them some sort of what's going on. But it's never going to be the full truth. There is a sanction of this reality called private life. And those that are wealthy enough to have an affluent private life, meaning that they have a hand in socially engineering the way life ebbs and flows for the common folk, there will and shall forevermore be a sword under the sly fox's tail. Yet another warning. The Five of Swords depicts the destruction of the self. You'll be lured into another situation or argument you know to avoid. Your selfishness and desire for power will lead you to defeat. Pain and discord will result. I remember telling my oldest son, yet at the brink of this situation, that some of this wasn't even ours to touch. I know from a preponderance of evidence inside of historical means that there is a portion of society that will get sick and will put it out through the mainstream media that everybody's sick. Or they will leave enough gaps in the truth for everyone to fill in their own blanks to associate and assume this infamous sickness. This is not new, nor was it unpredicted. Some of the more master interpreters of energy, as well as historical context, have found all sorts of chinks in these armored up news castings. which so eloquently, I couldn't have planned this shit if I wanted to. The next two cards. Hold on. This is the next card. So the next card is the, let me make sure I get the Seven of Wands. Let's do it like this. Seven of Wands on page 56 of the guidebook. Courage, inner strength. A single wand stands up tall, ablaze with light. The others fall away in shadow, such is the story of the Seven of Wands. You'll not find any strength or support from others, only yourself. It's time to be truly courageous and stand up for your beliefs. You may feel overwhelmed with caution and fear, but your internal fire will guide the way. Four of Wands, completion, celebration. You've done it. The Four of Wands is a card of completion. Your labors have been steady and strong, and the harvest will be plentiful. In other words, it's time to party. There might be an upcoming event to mark this occasion, a graduation, wedding, or celebration of some kind. So enjoy yourself and those you love. This is an exciting and prosperous time. To me, together lets me know that there are still optimal choices to be made, optimal choices to be had, that there is, through intuitive guidance, a flame into the portal that unlocks all sorts of dark strangeness. And trust me, that's a compliment. We are being emotionally redesigned, reformatted. It's actually the turning point of the spread as well. So the spread is in two rows. These were the last two cards of the top row, which to me indicates where we are right now. The fact that these two cards came after, immediately after these two cards, gives me a notification of a new set of ideals. But will ideals that will be multi dynamic, and that we are no longer going to be subscribing or ascribing to this thing called a what is it? One size fit all. We're going to actively pursue that which is customizable to the soul, that which is complementary with an E to the soul. And we're going to try that on. And as that begins to fit, this will manifest. And it will become a reality from the inside out, meaning it will dwell within the individual and be contributed to the collective. And that the collective is going to be a truly, confidently diversified situation. So this is the next card out, which is the Six of Pentacles. The Father of Pentacles, Earth sign. The Mother of Pentacles, Earth sign. Once again, not necessarily did I catch it for the Six of Pentacles, but when these two popped out together, when the Mother of Pentacles and the Father of Pentacles popped out together, which just made me think of something. Okay, so yesterday after part one, during part one, I made mention of how delighted I have gotten when the Ten of Cups and the Ten of Pentacles come out in the same spread. I'm gonna put in the link. I'm gonna put in the show notes. I'm gonna link to a reading that I had experienced not too long after I recorded part one. Where not only did the Ten of Cups come out and the Ten of Pentacles come out, but usually she does a qualifying spread on top of the primary spread with a different deck. And the Ten of Pentacles came out again. And it's something, I'm telling you, it is something when those cards come out in readings, the interpreter, like, yeah. So you could tell, like, you could sense it. She made it very apparent. Her amazement was like, wow, what is going on here? Just so I can just have, a firm foundation of some of the stuff I speak. Yeah, you can't make this shit up. And she has the camera drawn right there on her hands and the cards, so it ain't no fuckery going on. You will really be able to see it come out in real time. And I was that time I didn't holler. I was speechless. I was like, "Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now?" So I'm gonna remember to, because I know that I be saying I'm gonna put shit in the show notes and forget to link it. My apologies, but I'm gonna do that because I want you to, if you have time, to go visit with that reading and see, even if nothing else resonates with you, to be able to if you're learning tarot, it will be a good moment to have it be class time. But yeah, Ten of Pentacles, Ten of Cups on the primary spread. Then on the secondary spread, bam, Ten of Pentacles all over again. So the which let me say this real quick. It equates to the King of Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles. So when this power couple shows up, and I will say I've never seen them together in a spread. Um, I've seen them come out in separate instances in a spread, but to plop out together, so that rendered messaging for my physical spaces, my non physical spaces, my personal spaces, and my professional spaces. Because, quite honestly, an earth sign does well to go into business with another earth sign. The King and Queen of Pentacles, to me, is the elite power couple, not the average mediocre power couple. It's the incredibly optimal, well acclimated, highly alchemical couple. So, the Six of Pentacles: prosperity, growth, generosity. The Six of Pentacles indicates your long awaited fruits are ready to be harvested, bringing more wealth than anticipated. Make sure you are generous during this bountiful time. This card also signifies generosity coming from someone else. If this is the case, accept the help with grace and put the resources to good use. In part one, I remember saying that the grassroots and down in the trenches, they are adhering to the calls of duty that says it's time to rearrange. It's time to redirect the way we spend money and who we spend money with. It's time to superbly understand that those we support are those that can support. I used to often say, I know McDonald's is cheaper, but trust me when I say every time you roll up to that drive through, you make sure that the stockholders' kids go to a decent college than even one of your buddies. And I know when we talk about rebuilding Black Wall Street, we really do have a long way to go. But it does start with the individual. And it starts with the individual just saying yes to some things and no to others. And you really could. You can. You can go to the marketplace and you can buy a pair of socks from your buddy that got a table, got a stand at under the venue. You can. You really truly can. And if these big brands say that they don't want you buying a product, listen up. Yo, listen the fuck up. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. If you know that your money actually is contributing to your people's, I won't necessarily say oppression, but you know the shenanigans and fuckery that's going on. You know that the big brands and big corporations and big name this, yeah, they like it big. Why? Because it's not like a natural occurrence. So they got to make it, pun intended. So this is the notification of the olive branch. This is the notification that things are being redirected, but not necessarily dwindling or drying up. And so the grapevine, uh, establish and identify your grapevine. I'm almost sure that instead of going to these big chains to get some of the necessities that you need, I'm pretty sure the marketplace has the, if not better, in quality and substance and quantity, if need be. Remember, supply and demand. That's what makes things grow. Father of Pentacles, page 160. And right at this moment, well, yeah, I'm going to read it like this regardless. Okay, steady entrepreneurial. The Father of Pentacles is a steady, gentle man. Upon first meeting, he can almost seem dull because of his extremely calm temperament. But underneath is an incredibly passionate man who prioritizes the stability of his job, family, and home. He is entrepreneurial and diligent at work, a true pleasure to know. Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. Mother of Pentacles, page 158. Domestic, loving, patient. The Mother of Pentacles excels in the home. She knows exactly what to do while raising a family and tending to the task of daily life. There's a potential for her identity to become wrapped entirely around her children and home, which leaves her needy and attached. This is because of most this is the cause of most of her turmoil. She often has qualities of a healer, and is very connected to nature. Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. Remember, the Pentacles. Let me see how I could do this. Okay, so this was the first card. The Pentacles represents the earthbound zodiacs. I have not mastered my scholarship with the connectivity between tarot and astrology just yet. I'm doing better with um, connecting certain dots, and as usually, it mostly stems from me as my example, as my leading example, and then I will try to speak it into the general collective. The understanding around these three cards indicates to me that just beyond what we can see, meaning somewhere around when the autumn kicks in, will we truly understand where we are with this thing as the first segment of a fourth segment unfolding. In my honest opinion, I don't believe that we are going to be done with all that has to transpire until 2023. When Saturn entered into Capricorn in 2017, and I'm a horoscope reader, and I don't just read one horoscope in the morning.